Ready to light that fire by doing the things that make you come alive? Welcome to Health Raisers, a podcast for wise women. I'm your host, Dr. Nadine. I left a soul-crushing medical career full of bad news and evolved into a joyful health integration coach, helping hundreds of women find their healthy. You're more than your dress size. Stop putting up with toxic relationships, swallowing your true emotions, and sacrificing your mental health. Stop using your body as a battlefield. You're always giving. You deserve to put yourself first, not just for your sake, but for those you love. Wise women, let's make ourselves a priority right now. It's time to raise some health together.
Hello, everyone. Today we welcome back Steve Ritter, founder and CEO of the Center for Team Excellence, for a conversation about his newest book, Living in Sync: How We Engage with the World. When Steve was last on the show, we explored the team clock, his practical guide to building healthy teams. Today, with Living in Sync, we're exploring the power of self-reflection and how understanding ourselves and our personal environment can deepen the quality of our relationships. Steve, it is always a pleasure to interact with you and have a great chat.
It is a pleasure to continue the conversation we began a long time ago on the same topic of wellness, right?
Absolutely.
And I was, anticipating our conversation. I was thinking about we measure wellness in so many ways. The easiest way is did I work out this week? Are my muscles atrophying or growing? Did I eat too much salt on the airplane trip back from Atlanta this week? No wonder I'm up 5 pounds in water weight. That's an easy wellness thing. It's how much do I weigh? Does my heart work? How did I do with my last checkup? Right. But then, both of our careers have taken interesting trajectories as well. So career wellness matters as well. And it's massively connected to our physical, medical wellness. But then as I was thinking about it, I don't know, financial wellness is, another one. Spiritual wellness is another one, right? But I don't know one that drives more pleasure or displeasure with life than relationship wellness. The connections we make with people in the world and the quality of those connections can either bring the most magic or the most consternation than any of the other financial career and so it's easy to boil it down to how's your best friend doing, or how's your marriage, or a lot of people have a work spouse at work, how's your work wife, or something like that. Those end up being the things that we measure frequently as the most. And I've come to kind of view that as a foundational, if you want to kind of look at the way teams evolve, or the way organizations evolve, or the way we evolve, they have many of the same principles. And so when you think about relationship wellness, we're going to have largely the same conversation that we had a few years back when we talked about team wellness, right?
Yes.
Because there's foundational elements to that, and there's ways that we connect, and there's ways that we grow, and there's ways that we support each other's growth, and then there's ways that we navigate the change that all that causes, and then we do that over and over and over and over the course of the 8 or 9 decades we're blessed to have on this planet in this form, right? And so that's been subject to my life and subject to my study for
a very, very long time.
Bringing you Health Raisers is possible because of these incredible sponsors. Feeling the need for a little pampering? Do you want an escape from the hustle and bustle of daily life? Mac Salon and Day Spa is your destination for relaxation and rejuvenation in Southwest Michigan. Get ready for a retreat in the woods. Mac offers comprehensive services tailored to your needs,
including massage, facials, nails, waxing, and hair treatments, ensuring you feel refreshed and beautiful. Whether you're preparing for a special occasion or simply treating yourself, the experts at MAC are committed to helping you look and feel your best. Their commitment to wellness isn't just about beauty, it's about balance, confidence, and feeling amazing in your skin. Visit them today and discover why they're Southwest Michigan's premier choice for all your beauty needs. Looking for some time away from the chaos of everyday life? Step into the beauty of Fernwood Botanical Garden, where nature, peace, and renewal come together. Nestled along the scenic St. Joseph River Valley, in between Niles and Buchanan, Fernwood's 105 acres of lush gardens, quiet trails, and serene woodlands offer a sanctuary for replenishing your soul. Wander through vibrant landscapes, listen to the melodies of birds, and connect with nature at your own pace. Indoors, you'll find an inspiring art gallery, a lush fern conservatory, and a welcoming cafe, perfect for reflection and relaxation. At Fernwood, there's always something to discover, from engaging classes and special events to charming, verdant venues for your own gatherings. It's more than a destination, it's a feeling, a place to breathe, learn, and grow. Plan your visit today. Explore, discover, connect.
In the mood for coffee, tea, yummy pastries, or cool swag? My friends at Infusco have got you covered. Infusco Coffee Roasters is a cozy neighborhood coffee joint in Sawyer and St. Joseph, Michigan. Infusco stands for a healthy community. They craft irresistible seasonal drinks, sourcing local artisans' products. The flavors shine from quality ingredients, and their beans are roasted on site. They do not hide behind tons of sugar. Every time I go, I'm greeted by my name with a smile. Bad service is just non-existent. It feels like stepping into a friend's living room. They keep it personal. Old school eclectic coffee mugs on the wall, fun merch including stickers designed by artists, t-shirts, and sweatshirts. It's the perfect place to get to know your neighbors and chat with tourists. You will always find people deep in conversation. Special events keep it fresh. Community, health, the heart of Sawyer. That's Infusco. I hope to meet you there.
Why I wanted to deepen the conversation with you with your new book, because if I'm right, when we talked about Team Clock, it was really about kind of an outward facing look at how we fit with others in various team settings. But with Living in Sync, I'd like to know what encouraged you to turn the lens inward, to talk a little bit, to explore more the power of self-reflection. What led you there?
Two things happened, Nadine. First was somebody asked a question that I had never been asked. And I'm late career. You know, I'm 71 years old, and Living in Sync was my fourth book. I wasn't actually thinking, I wasn't thinking in new ways. And somebody asked me a question that I hadn't thought about. And the question was, isn't the recipe for what makes a healthy organization and the recipe for what makes a healthy team and the recipe for what makes a healthy relationship the same? And have you ever applied that recipe to individuals, to the way a person manages their environment in the world? And I hadn't. And then I thought, well, oh my goodness, this is where I came from. Social work, my academic credentials are in social work. Day one in graduate school, you were introduced to Florence Hollis and Jane Addams and the person in environment lens. And I'm like, well, this is where it started for me, was like, you look at, you don't know anything about another human being unless you can understand the environment in which they're interacting and all those influences and the way they cope with that environment. It is absolutely at the foundation of social work as a profession, is to think about someone in terms of an infinite number of spikes driven into the ground at whatever level. And so if I witness a birth, or if I witness a death, or if I have a financial inheritance, or if I break a bone, or if I, witness violence or get traumatized in some way, how I manage that is going to shape who I am. So then I started thinking, well, all right, is that recipe the same for the way individuals cope with the world? Which led me to this second epiphany, which is only an epiphany as long as you realize it's obvious. And then it's no longer an epiphany because it's obvious.
Simple is difficult, isn't it?
That's right. Is that is the platform upon which all these other things, right? So if I'm going to measure the quality of a relationship, if I'm going to measure the quality of a team or an organization, I can't do that unless I know how well the people are inside those relationships and inside those. So it felt like, to me, our relationship with our environment, not the trees and the bushes kind of environment, but the things that we have to navigate in the world, is the platform upon which all these others grow. And how do you measure that, right? So, we'd spent all sorts of resources in designing an assessment tool for teams that eventually got trademarked and research validated and so forth. And we had built a similar one for measuring the quality and wellness of relationships. So then it's like, how do you measure this, right? How do you find a way to measure the individual efficacy and effectiveness with which we navigate our environments, regardless of what the challenge is? Someone got diagnosed with an illness, right? We relocated to a different state, like whatever the list of things are that we're navigating. Like, how do you measure the effectiveness with which we navigate those things? So then I set out, this is where Living in Sync came from, is to say, so what is this? So we started with a piece of qualitative research. We found 20 people that ranged in age from 20-ish to mid-70s. Among those 20 were about half and half male and female. Among those 20 were probably a smattering of, what might be considered a more conventional male-female relationship to wherever on the LGBTQ plus spectrum you might want to find people. We had people of different political views. We had people of different ethnicities. I tried to make my sample as large as possible. And then we asked people to do a pre-post evaluation of the way they coped in the world in 10 different categories. And then based on that evaluation, we asked them to commit to working on something for 3 weeks. And then we remeasured. And everybody, easily found something to work on. And everyone made statistically significant change in that area of their life. So what I had was a quick piece of qualitative research evidence that when you focus on an area of your coping wellness, it will improve. And then apply that where you want. Apply that to, am I living in a way that's aligned with my values? Am I conducting myself in respectful ways with people? Am I accountable? Can I be relied upon? Am I growing? Am I embracing things outside of my comfort zone? Am I managing change effectively, right? And any of those that flags as well, maybe not lately, then it's like, what do I want to do about that? One of the funniest sections in the book is actually, I think, at the last page of the book, which is I was describing the sample of people that did this, and I was seeking people who were willing to participate in this. And one very important person who I disguised in the book. I said, "Would you be willing to do this?" And she, but it's a he in the book, said, "Well, does it require me to work on myself?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "No, I'm good. No, we're good. No, thanks." So it occurred to me, like, not everybody wants to.
Yes.
You can get fine with pain. Pain gets normalized. So whether that's I'm not living according to my values, or I don't have the kind of connections and relationships that I want, or I can't be relied upon, I'm not very dependable, or I haven't grown in years because I don't seek to grow, or I don't manage change well, I freak out when things alter on me. Like, I can be fine with all that. Pain gets normalized.
Yes.
So the book assumes you want to grow forever. That you're never going to get stuck in a place where you normalize something that we might consider dysfunctional, whether that is not being kind to people, or living in a way that violates your values, or enduring disrespect, or being okay with mediocre connections, or not pushing yourself to grow, right? Like, you can get okay with that in life.
It can become very comfortable, or just what you know. And so you're not conscious of what you're doing, or even aware that there is a choice.
Well, but you are such a good example of this. You had, potentially a thriving medical career as a pathologist that was making you sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So for how long, and I'm not asking, you don't have to answer this, but for how long did you endure that pain before you had this, like, wait a second, it doesn't have to be this way? And then a lot changed after that. Right. So this approach that I'm taking in this book, and this book just isn't a piece of qualitative research. Each chapter is designed to ask those questions. Before it gets deeply rooted, right? Like, so the idea, like, what did it have to get this painful before the enlightenment of, like, wait, it doesn't have to be this way happens? Or if you ask the questions proactively, you and I have had this discussion. We're going to celebrate Nancy and I are going to celebrate our 49th wedding anniversary this year.
Congrats.
And one of the things that she rolls her eyes at is I say frequently, how are we doing? How are we doing? I'm like, Steve, would you stop? Why do you? And because every once in a while I say, how are we doing? And she says, well, since you asked, there's this. And I go, like, that again, right? We all stumble over the same rocks, many times. But by asking that question, I'm saying I don't want that stumble to get any more deeply rooted than it gets when I ask frequently. I don't want it to tentacle down and become a normalized pain. And so part of the approach of this book and this assessment process that became Living in Sync was, if we ask these questions early and regularly, then we take advantage of the pain, because the pain's there symptomatically to cause us to be attuned to something that's going on, right?
Yes.
We don't want to not feel the pain. We want to travel to the reason it's there and then address whatever that is. Well, okay, if I've got an itchy bump on my wrist, maybe that's something that's not on my skin. Maybe that's something that's happening in my body that's causing an itchy bump on my skin. Well, apply that to your career, or apply that to your marriage, or apply that to whatever the situation is. Let's catch some symptoms on the early side and then decide whether that's something we want to do something about or not.
So let's start with the concept of person in environment. Can you tease that out a little bit more for my audience who, as you kind of mentioned earlier, it's not looking at the bushes and the trees, but people might think, does that mean sitting in my office or somewhere in my house? What does it mean?
So the environment is defined as the as kind of all the domains of your life. So when, in the late 1800s, when social work was being defined as a profession by Florence Hollis and Jane Addams and Mary Richmond, what had already been established was the field of psychology. Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud and Alfred Adler and all those folks. And Freud and Jung and Adler and all those folks said, let's drive a deep spike a mile into the ground and find out the way the human mind works, right? What motivates people. And so it was a look into the mind, right? And Florence Hollis and Mary Richmond and Jane Addams said, well, wait. Well, in that world where that mind lives are all these other things, right? Is there running water in your house? Do you have enough money to pay your rent? Is there heat in the wintertime? Is your body working? Do you have a trusted friend? Do you have kinship with someone? Is your neighborhood safe? Do you have enough resources? Et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And that's almost infinite. Right. So like you can narrow it down to some important things like is my home safe? Do I have kinship? Do I have meaningful work to do? Like you can narrow it down to some important things, but it's infinite at the same time. And so they're saying so the person in environment was to say, in order to understand the person, you have to know all the context that person lives in order to understand them. And therefore, when we're measuring, as psychology and social work and medicine does, somebody's wellness, we're asking about how, given the scarcity and abundance of resources in that larger environment, how are they navigating the world? How are they coping with the world? My profession, as yours has, is around assisting people in strengthening their wellness. It just broadens the definition of what that is to include the context and realities of that they happen to be living in. Now, that changes all the time, right? So an example I would give is I went from having this amazingly wonderful, I can't believe the life I've been blessed with moment a couple of years ago where we're sitting in our lake house in Minnesota, loving the fact that we have 5 grandchildren now and that our health is good, when the phone rings and my 8-year-old grandson gets diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he's going to have to go through a surgery and he's going to have to go through chemo and it's going to be about a year, and fingers crossed people like this tend to do pretty well, but it's going to be a rough year moving ahead. Well, all hands on deck, right? You drive home from Minnesota back to Chicago and you're covering the littles while they take him over to, Lurie Children's to get his first surgery. And, for the next month, 10, 12 months, you're waiting for the PET scan that says, hey, okay, he's good. But in that time, everything is upside down in your life. So there's your person in an environment, right? I didn't have cancer, but someone I loved did. And my daughter knew how to be a mom, but she needed help with the little kids while she took the big kid for treatment. And Nana and Pop can help with that, right? And what does this mean financially? And on you go. So now we take the person in environment theory and we start applying it to real life situations. Anyone in your audience right now has something like that going on.
Sure.
Everyone in your audience has something like that going on somewhere. Some kind of challenge, some kind of disappointment, some kind of twist of fate that perhaps wasn't anticipated or perhaps they'd never seen before. And now all the person and environment coping skills that people have come to bear. We find out how well you are.
So this is, okay, the next 3 questions really, 3 questions came to me as you were talking. So I want to really address this one first. I had a personal reaction when I was reading this book. So much of self-improvement, like the New Year resolution, can feel like it's telling us that we're bad we're broken, and we need to be fixed. We're not good enough as is. So that's personally why I stopped setting new, because I was setting myself up for failure. And I just hated feeling like I was always a project that needed improving.
Yeah.
So can you tell us how this approach, interacting with the person and environment cards, which I'll get to in a few moments, interacting with the book, how does that differ? How do we shift out of that mindset of, I'm not good, I'm bad?
Well, fundamentally, it is strengths based versus problem solution based.
Okay.
Right. So one of the things that they teach in social work school is you look at people in the context of their environment from a strengths perspective. What do they bring that they can leverage to grow or to cope? Versus this is what's broken, how do we fix it? Which is pretty mainstream medical model, right? Diagnose the problem,
right?
Find a procedure or a medicine that can fix it, right? Well, and pathologists are at the middle of that, right? Here's this tissue. You look at it and see if there's anything wrong with it, and then we'll figure out what to do with it. And we'll prescribe this procedure. We'll prescribe this medicine. Social work is a profession, and then therefore, coming out of that in my 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s into the world, I look at everyone, particularly people who are struggling, as what is it that they're bringing to the table that has gotten them through all this adversity? Like you go to the kind of the adverse childhood experiences data that came out of the CDC 20 years ago, said, if these 10 things have happened in your life, you're cooked, right? So all these people who have had all these traumatic things happen actually have a set of strengths that other people don't have. In my early adulthood, the person in my circle that coped the least effectively was the person who'd had the least adversity in the first 20 years of his life.
Well, that kind of makes sense, though. That makes sense, doesn't it? If you haven't had adversity, if you've had a soft, cushy existence, then how would you develop the skills?
Well, you don't learn. This is in the book, right? You don't learn counterbalance until you start falling off the bicycle when you're learning how to ride a bike, right? So you have to have the adversity to grow the strength. But that's the basis of the. Is something broken? Let's fix it model versus the what is this strength and how do we leverage it model. Even if you go to the extreme of folks who have had a lot of trauma in their life, the first view of that person is, I'm sorry, my microphone is hooked under my wheel here. I didn't want to get cut off. The first view of that person is, as a consequence of that trauma, what do they now have that they bring to the world that we can leverage and strengthen moving forward. Okay. So it's just a lens. It's just a difference in lens, looking at the same thing from a strengths perspective versus a problem solution perspective.
Okay.
Which is not a default way of thinking. I think that your question says the default way of thinking is, what's wrong with me? How do I fix it?
Yeah. That what a lot of the wellness industry is built upon? Yep.
Did you get to the Absolutely. Did you get to the part of the book about the girl who on the beach that was digging in the sand? Mm-hmm. Well, what an amazing. I sat there and watched this kid go from miserable to on top of the world in the course of 15 minutes.
So can you share with the audience that
story? So it's a public beach. People gather to hear live music. It's a summer thing people do. You bring your lawn chair, you bring a blanket. So this 12-year-old, I'm assuming doesn't want to be there. Her family's up the hill, grooving on the music and paying no attention. The water's shallow enough that people aren't worried about whether their kids are going to drown. There's 20 or 30 kids playing on the beach, and she is sitting there alone, looking miserable. just miserable. You don't know whether she's sad, whether she's bored, whether she didn't get to go out with her friends because her parents took her to the beach for this thing. Like, you have no idea. All you know is there's this single 12-year-old kid sitting on the beach, lonely as can be, scowling, right? Miserable. Who knows why? So I take an interest in stuff like this, right? It's like, what is going on here? Because every other child on the beach is having a blast. Every other child on the beach. But before you know it, she starts playing with the sand, and she takes her foot and she kind of moves some sand out to the right, and then she moves it out to the left. And she started the process of digging a little hole. Well, now the hole's getting bigger and the hole's getting bigger, and she's not has become industrious, right? And now, before you know it, this thing is like knee deep, and she's in it, and now she's trying to figure out, and she's got this methodology. It's kind of like bulldozing sand off to the sides with her feet. She has hands, but she's not using them. She's got this methodology, and no one's really taken notice yet, but now she's got this hole that's got to be, I don't know, 4 feet in diameter and probably 3 or 4 feet deep that she's now in. And some kid sees it and runs over and jumps in it, and the sides cave in, and she's like, cool, we'll just rebuild it, right? And then that other kid invites another kid. Now all of a sudden, every kid on the beach is like, wants to play in a hole. And she's sitting there like proud, like she created the playground for these kids. Before you know it, they're having this who can make the coolest move jumping over the hole, who can make the coolest move jumping into the hole, right? And before you know it, 15 minutes later, 20 kids are doing this Pied Piper round, wait until your turn, do something cool, next, while she's sitting on the sidelines just like, whoa. That's the book. Right? Who knows what this kid's circumstances were? Who knows why she was upset? Maybe it was only that she was 12 and she had a flood of hormones, and being grouchy was what you do when you're 12. Maybe something awful had happened. Who knows? But she found a way in her environment, in that moment, to shift that and change that in a way that then impacted not only those 20 kids, but me, sitting 20 feet away, observing this from the outside, learning something about life from a 12-year-old.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually interacting with the deck of cards that accompany the book. I'm a very hands-on person, so I like that it's very tactile. But I also wondered while I was interacting with the cards, like I would see a question and I would go, and I'll get a little bit more specific in a few moments, but I would go, well, it depends. Or what do you mean? So I guess the question would be in this setting, and I suppose it could differ for different people, but do you think, or would you recommend being very specific? Would it be better to more conducive, maybe to an overthinker like me, to pick a particular situation and use that example or that difficulty or that challenge while going through the cards?
What a great question. I have a neighbor who's a physician who was in that first sample. And a couple of the cards she got to, she said the same thing. She said, you were asking about 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Because I got 3 different answers.
Yeah.
So the answer is your choice, right? They're prompts, right? If a statement on the card causes that reaction, that's the point.
Okay.
Right? So for her, she said, well, 5 minutes ago, I thought my husband was listening, but he wasn't. And that pissed me off. 5 days ago, I had to arrange a funeral for someone who had no family. 5 years ago, my life shifted when I decided to do work in the prisons. Which one are we talking about? Well, whichever one. They're all versions of the same question that's on the card, right? So part of the nature of doing any assessment is that it's time sensitive, right? That in today's perspective, this is where I would place this card, right? So what is interestingly frequently common is someone wavers. They got the card, they're thinking about it, and then they almost put it on agree, but then they put it on neutral, or they almost put it on agree and they put it on strongly agree. Something happened while they were thinking about what that card surfaced for them that caused a reaction that put it in somewhere in a strongly agree to strongly disagree place. Or neutral doesn't actually mean neutral. Neutral means I'm not sure right now. I need to think about this some more.
Yes.
Yeah. So as a tool at a macro level, it's designed to flag areas of common theme.
Okay.
But on a micro level, it's designed to do exactly what you described, which is to cause you to think about this a little bit, right? So it does both. When someone's done with the card sort, there are usually at least half a dozen cards that are saying the same thing. They're like, yep, this is an issue. But there's also always a card or two that got someone really thinking about something they hadn't thought about for a while.
I don't want to forget to say this because I have a post-menopausal brain. But another thing that occurred to me when I was interacting with the questions and the cards is how everyone does this. You are, I won't say dishonest or not yourself, but you're a different version of yourself depending on who you're with, where you are. How can we get clarity interacting with these cards? Like, how do you figure out what's the real me? Is the real me appropriate in every situation?
I'm gonna answer your question, but on the way here this morning, I was listening to a comedian who was talking about how he has to decide how black to be throughout the day, and that white people don't have to think about how white to be, that black people have to decide. He said, the James that you work with is not the real James.
It's
right.
It's true.
So to that note, these would be three different experiences. You by yourself with the cards, the real you, being totally honest with yourself. This is how I feel about this statement. All right. That's one way. Different outcome. You and Kevin sit down and talk about it while you're doing the sort, and he gets to weigh in. Well, why did you put it over there? Well, because now we have a different filter, right? Third scenario is you and I, with me having these professional, credentials and experience, challenging placement of cards and then flagging certain things and putting them in, intuitive groups so that after you're done, I can say, have you noticed that 4 of the cards are saying the same thing? And causing an interaction at a professional way.
Sure.
Right. So you have 3 very different outcomes from that. Right. And I think your experimentation with the cards caused you to imagine all 3 of those. Like, how would I answer this in this context? How would I answer this in this context? Which gets back to the person and environment question, right? Because the contexts are all different. Okay. In the same way that the James I work with isn't really James, right?
But you can still have integrity in those different situations. You can still be honest.
You can, but interestingly, how the greatest honesty happens when you're alone. Mm-hmm. And then the degree of honesty then changes with the degree of intimacy of the person you're with, right? So the closer and the more trusting and the more safe I feel with somebody else, the more likely I am to be as close to myself as I would be if I were alone.
Okay. So we get to
and then who's in that inner circle, right?
Yes.
For many people, not many people. For many people, there aren't many people who earn their way into that inner circle and then don't find a way to fall out, by benignly saying something insulting or disrespectful, or by not listening with both ears, or whatever it happens to be that makes you back up a little bit. and protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a good marriage, there are times when your partner will do something or say something that makes you back up a little bit and protect. Right? So anytime you have to do that, you are diluting the purity, the honesty,
okay.
Right?
I see
because
that.
you have to protect.
Yes.
Yeah. And any good relationship is kind of doing this closeness, distance, dance all the time. Right? And then if you like biorhythm that with two people, they're not the same, right? Your close might be Kevin's distance. Kevin's close might be your distance. A good day happens when you both want to be close, or a good day happens when you both want to have some space, right? But those times when you want some closeness and he wants some distance, or the opposite of that, might be struggles in a good, long, multi-decade marriage.
Absolutely. Okay.
Because the need for some space and distance is a healthy strength. It doesn't mean something's wrong.
This is great, because now I want to get a little bit more granular. I want to connect the team clock concepts to the living in sync concept. So with team clock, we had the 4 quadrants of the clock being
investment,
trust,
innovation,
and distancing. And then with living in sync, you've got these 10 coping skills, the person environment coping skills, which the cards are
and
based
some
upon.
of them are in that investment category, which is kind of foundational.
I see.
So building the foundational.
I wanted to make that connection.
Right.
Yes.
And then in the trust category is like making connections.
Okay.
Right. And then the innovation quadrant is the growth. Right. And the distancing is the managing change section, right? And this is true with relationships as well, not just with individual coping, right? So what is true for a team or an organization, what is true for a relationship, what is true for an individual is that you have these foundational things like, what are my goals? What are my values? How do I manage the things in the world that don't align with those things? And those things have to be in place before you can then make connections in that place that we call the trust category, make effective connections with other people, right? That include my ability to, exchange kindness and respect and to be accountable and feel close and intimate with somebody else, right? It is reliant on the platform that we built in the foundation around kind of ethics and values and the norms in which we treat each other and those kinds of things. And all that then becomes what's underneath us when we want to grow or experiment with the world or be creative or try something or explore a little bit and discover, right? Is that if we feel connected to those around us and we feel clear in our direction and our values, our ability to push ourselves and grow gets strengthened by that, right? And then that last category, and this gets back to the word space I used, is when you grow, you change. And people who manage change get depleted. People who manage change have to find ways to cope and adjust. And one of the ways we do that is by getting a little space, getting a wider lens. Because what we know is that when there's stress in our worlds, we tend to telephoto our way into whatever that source of that stress is, and we lose context of the larger environment that's out there. And so one of the ways to manage change effectively is to widen the lens, is to step back. We call the team clock, we call it distancing.
Yeah.
Distancing is I step back far enough that I see the bigger picture, I get my new circumstances figured out, and then I step back into the situation that I was in. So in relationships, we call that space, right? Well, that's like a buzzword for adolescents. If you're dating someone in high school and they say, I want some space, you know what that means? That means we're breaking up. I want some space. I want some space means I just need to see the bigger picture here and then come back in and let's deal with it, right? Because that's the way we manage change, is to reset. What are the new circumstances? And then come back around. All right, well, based on that, How does this now align with my values? How does this now influence my goals in the direction that I'm headed in my life? How does this now influence the people I connect with and the degree of that connection with those people? And then how do we all grow together? And then how do we all manage that change again, right? Individually, in dyads, or in groups, doesn't matter. The Living in Sync book is taking that whole process of getting clear about your values and your direction, getting clear about who you want to connect with and why, getting clear about the appetite you have for your growth, and finding how to most effectively manage all the changes that come from all that over and over and over again as an individual, so that I can be more effective in my teams and in my relationships in my organizations, right? So that was the kind of the late stage epiphany of, here I got a whole career based on teams, and I'm realizing that it starts with your wellness, and that what I bring to my team, if it's not well, is going to hurt my team. And what I bring to my marriage, if it's not well, is going to hurt my marriage. And whether I want to be a good grandfather or a good father or a good husband or a good friend or a good colleague requires me to cope effectively with the world as an individual.
What if the other members of your team, like you talked about this last example in the book, does this mean that I have to improve myself? No, thank you. What if that's actually true?
Then I factor that in. Right. So let's just say I've got a teammate in the workplace who likes to mail it in. He comes to work, does his job, goes home, gets his paycheck, comes to work, doesn't run through a wall if the place, doesn't get a Team Clock Institute tattoo on his butt. Like he just doesn't, he's not engaged that way. He's a come to work, go home, get paid, do my job kind of a guy. Mm-hmm. You need those people too, right? And so that's the closest distance thing. So I'm not going to expect this closeness from someone who wants to be. I'm not going to expect growth from somebody who wants to stay the same. But I'm going to put that person in a role that staying the same works in. Maybe they're doing my month-end accounting or something. I don't know. So then take that interpersonally, take that out of the workplace. It is not a necessary requirement of good relationship for both people to want to grow all the time, right? That one person can be more ambitious than the other. One person can have more of a itch for creativity than the other, right? But between us, we get it all done, right? The bills get paid, the children get reared, the grass gets cut, the snow gets shoveled. Like between us, we get it done. You happen to be more creative and more ambitious. I happen to be more, let's watch football on TV, whatever. Mm-hmm. You make that work. The ambitiousness or desire for growth or willingness to change is not a necessary requirement to be alive or to be in a good relationship.
That's fair. Yeah. So this is...
In fact, Nadine, it is frustrating for my wife that when I told her I was going to write Living in Sync, she's like, oh, God, another one? Stop already. Do you have to keep doing this? Yes. So now she'll say, you can't help yourself, can you? I go, no, it just flies out of me. I got to keep doing this. But that is not her. And I don't expect it to be her.
Okay. So this is tying into your twist in the book on the golden rule being do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but you nuance that a little bit. Can you expand?
Right. So I almost think that the golden rule, and I've never said this before, so we're trying this out in this conversation, is judgmental. So if the buzzword from, Ted Lasso is be curious, not judgmental, right? If I say, do unto others the way I would have them do unto me, the judgment is you want it the way I want it. The way you want to be treated has to be the way I want to be treated, because the way I want to be treated is the way it's supposed to be done. I have found that's not true. That not everyone wants to be treated the way I want to be treated. They want to be asked, how would you like to be treated? Now, you can take that at a very superficial level, Like, people who don't want to be on the phone, they'd rather have an email, or people who don't want to have an email, they'd rather have a text.
Yeah.
Well, so you text people who want to be texted, you email people who want to be emailed, and you phone call people who want to be phone called. You don't do the other. You are practicing the nuanced golden rule. Do unto others the way they want to be done unto.
Okay.
Right? The example I think in our last conversation I gave you was early in my career. I was working in a therapeutic day school where you had broken kids who'd come from situations where they weren't able to function in a public school, so they end up in a therapeutic day school where there's a bunch of clinical things happening. And you're out doing normal things, right? So we're out with all these teenagers and we're playing softball, and some guy hits a line drive, and the kid who had a really, really rough life makes this parallel to the ground diving attempt to catch this ball, and it goes off his fingers into the outfield. And I say, "Nice try." And he said, "Don't you ever compliment me when I fail."
Okay.
He didn't want nice try.
Mm.
So I didn't stop being positive with him, but I took into account there's something that I don't know about his life that made that uncomfortable, that I have to now factor in to the way we interact. And maybe a year from now, he'll have the kind of self-esteem that makes it okay to get a compliment, but right now he doesn't. And I need to honor that.
All right. So much of being in sync with people around us does come down to how we communicate with each other. So what would you say are the key ingredients to healthy communication that can genuinely strengthen our relationships?
You can kind of go through each stage. So, like, I would say, here are some questions that are worth asking in any relationship. Like, can we both articulate our goals? Can we both articulate where we're going together? And whether that's coworkers or a romantic relationship doesn't matter. The point is that if we're going to be together, there are some things that we're going to have in common here about the reason we're together and what we're working on or where we're going. So like, we may have debate about how to get to the top of the mountain, but we agree on which mountain to get to the top of. Right? You might want to go up the front side because it's shorter. I might want to go to the back side because there's switchbacks. Right? We can debate that all day. And the pros and cons of that's the richness of the relationship. But are we going in the same direction together? Foundationally, do we know how to disagree? Do we know how to have different perspectives about things? That would be the next thing.
Say more about the disagreeing, because I don't know too many people that are comfortable with managing conflict or who can successfully navigate conflict with respect.
Well, so doesn't it get back to the judgment of the golden rule, right? It's like if I assume that you want it the way I want it, right? That I assume, I'm thinking of examples. I have these trading cards that have been graded and are worth money. Mm-hmm. They sit on a shelf growing in value. Nancy says, "Sell them." And I go, "Why?" "Because we're getting old." Like, well, I know, but we probably got 25 years left in us, so they're going to grow in value, right? So her perspective is cash in now. My perspective is let them grow, right? Mm-hmm. Can she see that world through my eyes? Can I see that world through hers? That's a baby example, right? What about something big like how you manage the nest egg that you guys have accrued that's supposed to, pay your bills through 95 years old, mm-hmm. through all circumstances? And what if you is way more conservative, one of you is more aggressive than that? Or what if it's parenting style, right? Junior's throwing a tantrum. I think we should give in and cut the crying. You think we should hold the line and teach a lesson? Uh-huh. I want to feed the monster and create a longer problem. You want to cut the head off the monster, mm-hmm. right? We should debate about that. The idea is that it is most natural to assume that people are going to have different perspectives on things. And it's most natural to use all the confirmation bias you possibly can to make the case for your own, right? But have you really thought about, have you walked a mile in somebody else's moccasins or not? It is the question, right? And so the relationship wellness point is that the more able you are to see different perspectives other than your own, the more effective you're going to be in relationships where people have different perspectives. And that is foundational to all the things that come next, right? Because eventually, when you want to connect with someone and you want to grow with that person, you're going to be doing things that are out of your comfort zone. You're going to be doing things that are innovative, and you're going to be doing things that are creative, and having different perspectives and good debate around why those are different perspectives become fuel for that later. So if you learn how to argue respectfully like adults and stay in dialogue early, then when the stakes are high and you've got disagreements about things later, you've built the tools you need to do that. Right? So that's the fundamental stuff, right? So then you can kind of say, all right, you can ask a zillion questions. You can say, how do I want to be treated? What are our ground rules when we're upset? Do we address issues right away, or do we apologize and make amends? Like, what do we do? Like, there's lots of what are our common or different views on things like religion or politics or things like that are lightning rods, right? You can ask those kind of questions. You can say, what are our different interests? What do we do in common? Like maybe you like to golf. Maybe I don't like to golf. Maybe we shouldn't golf together. It's like things like that. And then are there areas that are lightning rods for us that we need to be careful with moving forward? Right. So, you could go on forever. Like you can go in each section, right? So in the foundational section where you're talking about, alignment with goals and direction and things like that, there are a bunch of relationship questions that are tied to that. You can talk about connection. What do we do when things are rough? And then you can talk about each stage of that and say, here are the questions that a good, healthy relationship asks to be able to continue to grow healthier and stronger in that connection.
There's another part of the book that I found, it just stopped me in my tracks. It was the section about navigating growth, chapter 4. And I'd never heard anyone describe loss like this. So, when you're changing, you do lose something. You lose you make decisions, right, to make change, whether it's changing the way you viewed yourself, challenging your sense of identity, or actually losing physical people. You've decided no longer, you're not going to put up with disrespect anymore. Okay. So there's 3 aspects of loss. Again, stunning. You lose the person, what the person represented in your life. And 3, the version of ourselves we became because of our relationship with that person no longer exists now that they're gone. Wow.
I know it, and that's the piece that takes us out of the measurement of our individual wellness and shows us how vital the connections with other people are in ourselves. Right? That without you, I'm not me. Without you, I'm not me. Or I'm a different person now that you're gone. I've had 2 situations come up in the past month that have reconnected me with people who haven't been in my life for 35 years.
Oh, wow.
And now they're not 20, they're 46. And now they're, right? And things have moved on. And I'm now able to see who I was then, who I was in between, and who I am now. The most powerful one is there's a guy that was my student at Elmhurst University when he was 19, and I was 45 or whatever. And I could tell when he was 19 that he was going to lead in ways that I couldn't predict, but I just felt it. And he's not at Harvard. He's not at, Stanford. He's at Elmhurst. He's at a little school, right? Where you typically don't become somebody from Elmhurst, all right? Jesse Jackson would remind us that we're all somebody. But I could tell. Well, 3 months ago, I get a call from this guy. He's the dean of the School of Nursing at Emory University in Atlanta. And they are the number one nursing program in the country. And they want to do a workshop series on wellness. And he thought of me. So literally 35 years later. So I go, he's got a gray beard. He's a late 40s, established professional in higher education, making decisions about the way nurses are educated in the world. So we're 2/3 of the way through this engagement. I've been down to Atlanta twice to deliver workshop 1 and 2. We're doing number 3 in March, but we are immersed in the rekindling of who we are with each other in our lives again. Right? And a reminder of who we're not without each other. So it's just a different way of looking at loss. I think the first reaction you had to that chapter is every change a loss? Yes, but not maybe big L loss, maybe little L loss.
Sure.
Right? And that's just the notion that everything's always changing. Nothing's never not changing. Our digestive systems are replacing themselves every 12 hours or whatever is happening medically inside of our bodies. That there's nothing's the same ever. Right? But the change is so incremental you don't notice it unless time passes. It doesn't have to
necessarily be looked at through the lens of only loss. It can be what have I gained? How have I gained? Or that loss doesn't have to be seen as a negative thing. The loss is the gain. Right? That I shed this and became this. There's a page in my first book that describes my son going off to college. And this conversation that we had, he's 18 years old. And he's 34 now, 18 years old. And I'm like sad that we're not going to have this thing we've had all this time. He said, Dad, I'm not dying. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be something else. It's becoming something else, which was a gain, which is a gift. Right? So, the 18-year-old educates the old man. You're not losing anything. Beautifully said. All right. I want to be very respectful of your time because this is too comfortable and I can continue for a while. But I would like to thank you again for another wonderful conversation, another deep, meaningful conversation. And I would like to ask you again, because you have changed since we last spoke, has your personal definition of what it means to be healthy changed?
Yes. And it will be different in 5 minutes and it will be different next week. And that's what's changed is that I have embraced aging and I have embraced evolution and I have embraced adversity. And I'm grateful that I get to have another day with whatever comes next, which I didn't think that way 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So I guess that's the gift. And I thank you for this opportunity. And I hope that our audience finds value in our conversation.
I hope so too. I did, and I think they will as well.
Okay. Until next time.
Thank you.
Wise women, move from last place to first place in your life. Stop using your body as a battlefield. Let's raise health together with a customized health plan just for you. Contact me at npkhealthintegration.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.